Welcome, PJ. The Silent Clansman. This is series episode 2. Sorry, in our series of our independence podcasts.
I will get the playlist up for it soon.
Thank you for coming on. Brilliant to have you. We know that you're a very, very proud Scotsman, so this is the ideal opportunity for you to kind of speak your piece, let us know your story. I'll give you the mic. I know you're very capable of speaking, VJ. So
used to be involved in radio, so it takes a bit of pressure off of us today.
Yeah. Well, you know, they always talk about getting nerves before you start anything like this or go on stage. And I was a great anxiety person. You know, I fronted a lot of stage shows. I'd done the fireworks here in Elgin for 26 years. And, you know, give me a mic and I'll go for it. But before I get the mic in my hand, I'm usually pretty up to high dough. Today is very easy. You boys have made it, right? And Lee, you've made it very easy for me. And although I'm concerned that Lee here has got a big page of stuff about me.
I do.
And I wonder to myself, I don't know.
It's funny because we get guests on and I'm like, I've done my research, and a lot of them are like, oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I have.
Yeah.
It's good to know about people, you know. I don't want to come in with a blank canvas because then, not necessarily with yourself, but certainly with other guests, I can find them sometimes maybe struggling for questions, or maybe sometimes myself and Ryan have got a lot of questions that are based the same. I know today we don't.
No. And of course, the spooky thing about this is that the Silent Clansman started from a radio interview.
Is that right?
And that radio interview actually happened in the Walker's Shortbread boardroom down in Aberlour. When I'd got wind that a lady from the BBC was coming to visit them on other charity work. Her name was Kate Adie. Now, Kate Adie, for a long time, was the war correspondent for the BBC. And I thought it would be really interesting for the hospital radio station that if I could get down to have a wee chat with her. So one evening, I went down and it was all arranged. And we had an hour's chat. And she was a very, very interesting lady. And that was the bedrock of the Silent Clansman.
Oh, so when was this, PJ? Sorry.
This must have been 15 years ago. Although the Silent Clansman hadn't appeared and didn't appear really until about 5 years ago. But what we discussed at that interview, and it was very informal, we chatted about her time in China, in Tiananmen Square, and how she managed to report with guns and rockets and tanks and everything, and a lot of scared people around her, how she manages to cope with that. And she was very open about it, and she explained to me that whenever any of these war correspondents went overseas, the 3 main things that they needed was a toothbrush, a torch, and some real money. Not plastic cards, but the cards weren't around that much then, but cash, local cash, so you could basically bribe people to get to where other people couldn't go to. So money, a toothbrush and torch. Obviously, when the electricity goes, that's it. And you've always got to have a nice smile for the BBC, don't you?
Because I did read a post where it said you based the Klansman off of the Tiananmen Square thing.
Absolutely,
and
right.
It is a thing that's massively like covered up as an event, right? Especially in the country that it was in, under like a communist dictatorship, right? In the CCP and whatnot. So what I wanted to kind of ask, I feel like I'm going to ask everyone this question. Like, we've talked about independence a little bit. Obviously, we're going to talk about it more as we go on. But I want to ask everyone that comes on, because I think we're going to all have different views and reasons of why we think independence is the way forward. So my question to start off with is, why independence?
Well, I think it's a great thing for our country to be independent. We've been attached to Westminster, England, for over 300 years now. And it's a case of we joined it at a difficult time. Things have changed so much, and things have changed so much even in the last decade since even I started marching, or 2014. We have changed so much, and the boundaries and the situations that we're in, even today, and we might chat about that later on, the difficulties that people are having today. We would be a great country to go alone. So many other countries in Europe, Scandinavian countries, are great models for Scotland. The people that come to us and use those old paraphrases about we're too small, we're too stupid, we're too this, we're too that, we'll never be able to cope, to manage on their own. I say that's a load of rubbish. We are very thrifty here in Scotland. We like to look after our pennies, and I'm pretty sure from the money that we can raise through all the industries that we have here, from tourism to fishing to oil, we have sufficient money, and we also have sufficient brains to look after that money. So I think, yes, independence is a very important thing to us. And it's always been with me. I think I seen, Lee, on one of the podcasts, you mentioned that you are still in the Scottish National Party.
Yes.
And that you, Ryan, see, I've done my homework as well, mentioned that when you first voted, you voted Labour. Mm-hmm. So when I came up through the 60s and the early 70s, yes, it was Scottish Labour, because we are working people and we do graft a lot. Absolutely. And that was the way to follow. Then the SNP came along, 70s, and I started to get interested in the independence through that way. I lived over in the west coast of Scotland in a wee place called Dunoon, and we had been basically on lockdown during the 60s because Dunoon was a military town where the Americans had a submarine base, and they had the first Polaris missiles based here in Scotland. So I lived in a military garrison, basically, full of Americans. And the SNP started to slowly come across, and you hear the word independence and the yellow flag with the ribbon. I don't even know what they call that. The wee black sort of wee ribbon.
It's a ribbon, isn't it?
I think it used to go on top of a cake, and they used to call them SNP cakes.
Is that right?
It's like, it's like
imagine a lot of people triggered by
that. So it slowly started to hear about independence. And I thought, this is a great time. So when 2014 came along, well, yes, I'm going to be part of this. And I went to a few yes marches, and I went to a few yes meetings here in Elgin in the town hall with Blair Jenkins, who was the founder of the yes movement. And I don't know where Blair is, but thank you very much anyway. And he spoke very positively about the future we could have and the reality of it. So, yeah, you get hooked on it there. And also, I liked the people that I was gathering with. And that was important. The people, I'll speak about the people in a wee minute. But going back to the Tiananmen Square, so when I watched a man standing with his message bags in front of 30 tanks, that left an impression on me that I'll take to my grave.
Powerful.
Because I thought to myself, the man's not shouting, he's not bawling, he's just got his messages. He's standing in front of the might of the Chinese government, and they've stopped. They've stopped. They don't run him over. The unfortunate thing that did happen was he was removed, and basically you never hear of him again. No. Although to this day, in some towns and wee villages around China, there are statues to the unknown man with the shopping bags. So that made a big impression on me. And when 2014 came along, and we had the 45 and the 55 in the referendum, I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
So that was very disappointing, especially as during that campaign, I hardly seen any no stuff around. It was all positive, and let's go for it. And then it's like, we lost. But from that loss, we have developed into a very sound unit moving forward. And maybe I don't know if this is a good thing to say or not, but maybe sometimes, when people talk about learning from your mistakes, we have learned so much that this time round, we will be absolutely over the finish line and we will have an independent Scotland.
I think such things such as Brexit and U-turns that we talked about last time, and even the last couple of weeks with UK politics, is just, putting more and more into this. And, me and Lee were talking about, like, obviously you are part of a movement that feels very strongly about this one way, and you are always protesting against and next to people that feel strongly about it the opposite way. But when it does come to, even when there is another referendum, probably the most important vote will be, I guess you would call it, the moderates, or the people that are undecided, which there is a massive community of as well. Like, people will come to me and say, I think I will vote independence this time, but I do want this answer. And I think, how do we, obviously we've got the Supreme Court ruling a couple of days from now, so that probably shouldn't kind of look too far ahead because we don't know what that's going to be come about. But even when there is another referendum, how do we kind of make sure that, like, people's questions get answered and that, to make them feel more confident to take that leap for change?
Well, we're doing it just now. This is the way forward. Good communication and good, honest communication. Not shouting, not bawling, not name calling, not bitching, nothing like that. We need to convince people by good, solid facts. You mentioned the Supreme Court ruling. That's going to take place on Wednesday of this week, and around Scotland,
there's going to be rallies.
We're already having rallies around Scotland. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm stuck in a classroom all day doing first aid, and I can't even get out for that unless I go sick myself. And then, no doubt, I'll pop up in a photograph somewhere, and they'll know.
Cut that bit.
Delete.
And so I'll just have to watch from a distance. But my hopes are with everybody, and when the announcement comes out, and that announcement is basically to open the gate for Scotland by saying, yes, you have the authority to run this second referendum. If it goes against us, it'll no matter. No. We'll still push on. We will push on until we cross the independence line. So when it comes to people who are doubters, not sure, people sitting on the fence, because there are many hundreds of thousands of them, it's important to just talk calmly, give them the facts. Now, I don't have all the facts. I'm no politician. I'm no economics guru or anything like that. I'm more your man in the street who wants to drive the independence movement forward and help that. But I won't be up there on the stage giving everybody the facts and figures. The only figures that I want to know is that yes wins a referendum. So yeah, good communication is so important.
Do you feel that if there's continually oppression against independence from Westminster, from England and things, do you think that looking back on history, because history repeats itself as we know, things like the Troubles in Ireland, that could be kind of the way things go if continuously there's a no vote, but there's also a mass independence movement? I'm not saying that things could get violent, but this is how the Troubles in Ireland started. It started with peaceful movements and things to a point where
it's met with derisory reactions and stuff like that. Yeah.
Could you see that ever happening?
The way I look at it is very much like the boiling kettle situation. Yeah. I've been on marches where we've had at times over 200,000 people come past us. I've had smaller marches where there's only been 15 to 20 people gathering, especially through the COVID years. We had static protests where we all stood 2 meters apart, all masked up, and throughout those years and all those marches, the Yes movement has a huge golden star in front of it that says there have been not one arrest, not one bit of bother. And the fact that the Yes movement is able to police itself is a great thing. Recently, I heard a podcast from Leslie Riddoch, who picked me out as one of the people who, during the campaigns, during the marches, because I stand in where she called it a flare point, where there could be bother when the marchers have to march past the counter-protesters, the unionists, led by Alistair McConaughey, the Holocaust-denying manky jacket. And that's where things get a bit tetchy. But she mentioned that by seeing me standing with my headphones, my dark glasses, and my hat, and my yes sign, very simple, and not saying anything, the message goes to the marchers. Just keep going. Sing to them, smile to them, laugh, be happy, ignore them. And I think that was a great way to give me a backhanded compliment, because I didn't realise that I'd done that.
Yeah.
And it also helps the police. When we go to these marches, I'm on the police list right up there. And when I arrive, they know who I am and they tick me off. And I discuss with them where I'm going to stand, where I'm not going to stand. And we have a great relationship with the liaison officers. And long may that continue. There is always, I guess, a fear that somebody may cause disruption and the shit will hit the fan. I think a bit of an example of that came at Perth recently when the Conservatives, the Scottish Conservatives, had their meeting there, and there was a wide range of groups outside that hall. People were accused of spitting on the MPs, throwing eggs at them, and heckling them. But what I seen was not that at all. I seen people who were angry.
Yeah.
People who were coming to the end of their tether. And people who were getting frustrated. And that's very close to the kettle boiling. And that's the sort of situations where things can go over the edge. And we must keep the heat and keep a lid on it. That is up to us. We have a great history of keeping cool. And we, as as Scotland and Scottish people, we do hold back quite a bit. But once we go, well, that's it.
Yeah.
So we have to be prepared if we're out and about and we see something that could be a flashpoint, is to intervene, calm it down, and just put it away. There should be no need for the way that things went in Northern Ireland. And I hope and pray, I'm not a religious man, that it never ever happens like that. Saying that, it is a broken marriage that we have, and we should have been out of it decades and decades ago. The fact that the stronger partner, the larger partner, the one with more numbers, doesn't want to let us go because we give them so much is a difficult one.
Yeah.
You know? If you were in a relationship with a sugar daddy and he was 86 and you were 24, and he decided, I'm bored with you, hen, you're no a great slosh dancer anymore. You have to go. You wouldn't want to go.
No.
But in our situation, we do want to go. But trying to get them to get rid of us is difficult.
And I suppose it doesn't follow a conservative trajectory either, right? Like, they've never accommodated for people that they don't think benefit them, right?
Because we keep their pockets filled.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So we do all that. So that's how it came about. And at that point, I was going to a march in 2018 in Edinburgh. And I thought to myself, like the man from Tiananmen Square, what could I do as not so much a lone wolf, but as an individual that made a big statement? And the very first appearance of the Silent Clansman wasn't in any of this sort of garb, really. I did have dark glasses, I had a baseball cap and headphones, and I was clean shaven, and I looked like one of the Pet Shop Boys gone rogue. So it was quite funny, but only a couple of people in Scotland knew what I was going to get up to, because I was going to put myself right in the firing line. The fact that I'm also a pacifist, I avoid all sort of confrontation, I don't into fighting and all the rest of it. I thought to myself, what can I do? So I thought, well, there's the unionist group. They're all there with their Union Jacks, all shouting and bawling that. Wouldn't it be good if I could just stand in the middle of them with a yes sign? Right. And I thought, that should be all right. As long as I'm not causing any bother, I'll go and do it. And there's a great video by the burglar's dog on YouTube. It only lasts 15 seconds, where I last about 15 seconds and I'm off. And they weren't very happy with me at all.
Were you nervous that first time?
No, honestly, and I've never had any nerves. I absolutely love standing in front of them and letting them heckle you. And, the things they say are quite disgusting, but it's just
straight over the top.
What are your... I mean, I've seen a few videos where you've actually had like a conversation with there was a guy in the middle of an independence march that was holding a Union Jack and was talking about it being a protest against the Scottish National Party, and you were...
That was actually quite funny.
Yeah, you were retorting to him saying this wasn't like an SNP march, it was an independence march. What are your conversations like with like unionists? Can they be amicable at times? Yeah.
Well, actually, on that day, that was Bill Oddie. He was out for a bird watching march, and he went to the wrong one. That's what happened there. But that chap there that came with the Union flag and started marching at the rear of the march at Stirling. I thought it would be a great opportunity to chat to him, because I'm always trying to get inside what their thinking is. And so I went to chat to him. Unfortunately for that chap, if he was looking for aggro or something nasty, he didn't get it. And that was brilliant on behalf of the Yes movement and the ALUB that organised that, because everybody was pretty sweet to him. And, and we did ask him, why do you support this? And, you take the money for your for your prescriptions, etc., and you take this and take that, but you're here with a Union flag, because I can assure you, if I went to a Union march or an Orange march or something like that with a big Yes flag, I wouldn't even get on the march.
No,
people would just remove you.
It was surprising, for me at least, having not seen many of these interactions of the civil discourse that was taking place, because when I first started kind of looking you up and looking up the marches and seeing the two sides, like I've only really experienced it through social media. And I think it's fair to say that social media makes a lot of conversations on things toxic to an extent. So I did kind of expect that I was going to be going into like a History Channel reenactment of like Bannockburn to begin with. But I was actually pleasantly surprised at how amicable these are. And like you were saying about the Yes movement, like all the marches I've seen, that there's no trouble, there's no rowdiness. It is just people representing stuff they believe.
Yeah.
And that's a really important thing, Ryan, because one of I don't like to use the word problem, but one of the hurdles that we've been trying to get through in the past couple of years is not so much infighting, but people who don't see as eye to eyes each other, whereas they should be keeping their eye on the finishing.
Would this be like the division in the independence movie? Yeah.
So when the Alapa Party came along, I could absolutely understand why people left the SNP or the Scottish Greens or wherever and moved to that side, because I could understand their angst that the SNP didn't seem to be moving fast enough for them. They didn't seem to be actually doing what they were put in place to do. They went in there on the mandate of independence. But I guess at the end of the day, and we've all been victims of this, over the past 4 years or so, it's not been an easy ride for the SNP. They've had to lead this country through COVID, through lots of other things, and I understand their point of view as well. For me, actually, I always get to sit in the fence in this, because people refer to me as a Snatsy or a SNP or all this, and I'm actually a member of the Scottish Green Party, so I love it when they.
Why do you think that they just categorise it as someone that like comes out as an independence voter, is on these marches, as they just automatically vote SNP? Why do you think? Do you think there's a conscious reason behind that?
Absolutely. There was a very short video last night. Obviously, you know, as the Silent Clansman, my nemesis is Alistair McConaughey and his Force for Good, because they are basically the direct opposition to what I'm trying to do. They are very vocal, they're rude, and all the other stuff that comes with it. Last night, he put a very small video, you know, maybe 2 minutes long, saying that he's going to be going down to Holyrood this week to sort out the snats, to educate them with a sing-song of joy when we get a knockback from the Supreme Government. And that is his fixation. We are all in the SNP. Now, when it comes to marches, that's not the case at all. It's a very, very broad independence church that we march under. People go to those marches just to show my flag and I'm taking part in something. So I don't think half the people that go in these marches are into politics, but they just want to see an independent country. And yes, it can be quite unnerving to be referred to as a snats, especially when they try to line you up with the Nazi party from Germany through the 30s and into the 40s, because I can assure you, we're nothing like them.
I don't enjoy that argument, because essentially you're trying to say that one nationalism is worse than another nationalism.
Yeah.
You're essentially saying, well, we don't agree with Scottish nationalism, but we agree with British nationalism. So,
Yeah.
you know.
And you know, a lot of people would say, Lee, that it's English nationalism.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I am very, very careful about as the Silent Clansman, and this is probably through my history, I'm 61 years old now, I'm an ex-military man, I've worked with all nationalities, and I have so many friends in England. And what I am trying to do is keep that friendship going, because I don't want to fall out with England. I don't want to fall out with Northern Ireland or Wales. They are all my friends, and they are the friends of many people that go on these marches. So we are definitely not an anti-English thing, but the unionism that comes from, certainly in the south of England, is very strong, and it's at times out of control.
Very toxic. Very toxic. Yeah.
I think like one thing that I heard mentioned one time is the reason that the Conservative Party and that kind of base in general doesn't want an independent Scotland is, I mean, I can't predict the future. Like we said, we're not economics people and that, and we have our beliefs and whatnot. But it said, the person said, if Scotland was to go independent and it worked and it went great, that the people down south that are still under Conservative control would then look at the hierarchy there and be like, well, they're not under your control anymore, and they're not having to go through financial hardship and austerity time and time again, and it would actually bring more attention to what they're doing wrong.
You're absolutely right. And what you're saying there is very important to the people who live in England and Northern Ireland and Wales, who we would separate from, because they get to see what the government in Westminster is doing to them. They had a mini budget this week, and the only people that benefited from that mini budget were bankers when they capped how much they could make, etc.
Yeah.
Everybody else suffered. Everybody. And I find it rich that, you know, that we have to kowtow to their orders. I know that when we have independence, which will be soon, we will have several parties here in Scotland, and it's not a given that the SNP will be the bosses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so we can do that. I probably think that they would, because they've already got their hands on the rails, the reins, and they know how to work it. But I can't understand why we can't have a Scottish Conservative Party, because we always need to have a voice of reason. one of the reasons that I was a member of the Scottish National Party for a wee while, but living here and being an ex-military person, I was under the impression at that point when I left the military, it was tied up. This was an SNP area and it was all going. So I thought I would fall back on my second party because I'm into world organisations and health, etc. Unfortunately, we didn't have a Green member for around here, so I always had to vote SNP. So, but I was happy to do that.
Because we live in quite a unique area where the MSP is the Scottish National Party representative, Richard Lockhead, and we have the infamous MP of the area, the Douglas Ross.
Yeah.
Two very different areas of the political spectrum, in fact, polar opposites, right?
Yeah.
So this does seem like an area that is very split down the middle when it comes to the independence question, I guess you would call it.
And you know, Douglas Ross only won by a few hundred the last time.
Yeah, it was razor thin
we're right
last
on
time,
his
yeah.
tail. And because we have the military here and we have the families here. And, you know, another thing that people bring up is, it's all incomers, etc. There are a lot of military people like me who end up staying here.
Yes.
And I have family here. I've got my daughter and son, etc. And they're as Murray can be. And they will go on to be supporters of Scotland.
Yeah.
So, you know, within a generation, bingo, we're through because people do that.
That is one thing that I notice enormously. The younger generation are 100% behind this movement. I mean, I wouldn't say 100%. I'm sure there is a certain percentage that will vote other ways, but I notice it just in its absolute droves. Like I speak to like younger members of my family that are now getting to the age of being able to vote and that, and I ask them the question or just out of interest, and they're like, I just can't see any other, other way. So it is interesting, and that was kind of what my thought process was. Like we spoke about this last time, that I just became of voting age. Neither of us had really kind of looked it up into the finer details, but I guess my kind of point of view is that I didn't see the system changing.
No.
Things and circumstances had changed over the year, but the system that was in place never changed or adapted. And that was my point of view of just wanting to take that leap of change, not even knowing if it was going to go well or not, but you've got to be able to take that risk in life sometimes, you know.
How old are you, Ryan?
I am 26 now, so I would have been 18 at the vote.
Right. Oh, so you just
dipped
out in your free bus pass as well.
well.
I was going to give you 20. I hope you've used your bus pass, because that's been just a game changer as well for the young folk.
Yeah. Especially in areas like this where it's not really a city, it's areas that are
out in the countryside.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the marches, we have two main groups that do the marches, all under one banner, and Yes To. And on these marches, it is stowed out with youngsters. And it's so good. And they know why they're there. It's not like their mums and dads have dragged them along. All right, I see people in prams giving it mental bat. But generally, the young folk know why they're there.
Yeah.
And that's a great, great thing to see. And I love seeing that. Not only that, we have, you were talking earlier on about how do we get the message out to people? We have so many groups around Scotland providing this sort of social chat. We have one of the most famous groups that I'm part of, and it is absolutely fantastic. And if you fancy coming down for a pint, come into the bar. It's called Indie Calf. And what they did was they noticed a loophole in the marches, that when people were coming to the end of the marches, they didn't have anywhere to disperse to for a cup of coffee or a pie or a cake or something like that. So they set up their own gazebo at their own cost. And people go there for a wee brew at the end and a chat and a natter. And during COVID, they started Zoom meetings, and it was called the Indie Cafe. So basically, you just zoomed in the afternoon, there's a group of you all sitting there, and you're just chatting. And it doesn't have to be about politics. It doesn't have to be anything like that. But it's really good. Go in for a cup of coffee in the afternoon, everybody chats. Come on Saturday night, they changed the shutter from Indie Cafe to Indie Bar.
Okay.
Right. So when you go down on the Saturday night, you take your hoose drams with you, and it can go until 4 or 5 in the morning until the last person's kicked out the Indie Bar. It is absolutely brilliant, and it's a great way to meet people, and it's also very important for the social side of things. We also have Indie Dave, the trucker. He does his rants, and now he does the Two Davies. We have Independence Radio. We have so many things out there that are so... Every one of them is a positive group, and they all want to see us do well. Along with that, I don't know if you guys are into your music.
Yes.
Well, we have some of the most fantastic musicians out there. We have people like Pete Scally, who during the COVID, just from his front bedroom, would put on a show every second night or something like that. We have Kevin Gore, who probably writes, most of the deepest, darkest rebel songs, if you would like, about Scotland trying to push on for independence, which will be looked back in hundreds of years' time as absolute poetry. We have Ted Christopher, who's also the main leader of the band for the Scottish Tartan Army. He organises every gig before and after games, no matter where it is, and he's found himself in some right places. The Tartan Army, they're there singing along as well. Yeah. We have Pepper Jack. We have so many. And recently we had a Yestival, which was in George Square, and it was led by Sandy Tom from just along the road here in Macduff. All these people are there providing a service which they love doing, and the people love to dance and to sing along to it. That's another way of getting the messages out. So that Supreme Court meeting that's coming along this Wednesday, once again, people will be gathering, people will be happy. They might be a bit upset if it's the wrong way around, but it will still not dampen our spirits. Yeah. We will continue. Because one of the things that you mentioned, Ryan, about, the Tories is, use the swearing, this is their fucking mess.
Yeah.
They fucking put us here. Yeah. At the end of the day, the Tories were voted in, and from the moment they were voted in until this mini budget this week, they have continued to fuck it up.
Yeah.
And people, when I hear people talking about people are dying, people are starving, yes, it is bloody horrible. And it really breaks my heart when I hear about people, popping their clogs and then finding out later on it was because they were emaciated, they didn't have any food that week, or this, that, and the next thing. Mums try to look after kids. And of course, we all budget. Everybody, it's got a budget. Whatever's in your wallet is your budget. You know what you can spend and you know what you can't spend. Why can't they do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you've seen that over the last couple of months of where they've had this in-house fighting that has totally eclipsed any of the issues that the country wants solved at the moment in terms of the cost of living crisis. And they've just been, we need to get Truss out because the Conservative Party's on the line. Like, they only think about themselves. There is no empathy part of that party, in my opinion, at least anyway.
I don't think they don't understand the word
no,
empathy.
I don't. I mean,
although saying that, I nearly crashed my bus this week. Don't tell the bosses. But anyway, I was listening to something on the radio this week, and there was a chap came on and who mentioned that we are the compassionate Conservatives. Yeah. And I nearly ran my bus off the road because I thought, what? Compassionate?
The birds don't go together, do they?
No. You see, like, some of their backbenchers, like when I remember the free school meals thing. I know, obviously, they didn't really have control of that in Scotland, but when it was going down in England, and there was this guy that got up and said that single mothers should be working harder, that, that conservative mentality. And it's always like, I find like the hypocrisy behind that, because it's all about personal responsibility, working harder until it's them getting found for corruption.
There was a Scottish MP this week who had to put a question in writing because an English MP couldn't understand what he'd said 3 times. He repeated the question 3 times. Not a thick Scottish accent.
No.
But I just find that if you can't even understand our accents, then why should we be here?
Yes, you're right. And there's a very infamous clip of a Conservative MP from a few years ago who mentioned Oliver Cromwell up here with the Scots and sending them to overseas colonies and getting rid of them. And the fact that maybe we should take a lesson out of that today. I mean, it just flies in the face of, Scotland. And when you talk about the Conservatives and the way they carry on in the House of Commons against the Scottish Conservatives, the Scottish National Party, or the other groups that are there, the ALPA Party, they stand up there as well and give it loudly. But the way they're treated, you mentioned the word toxic. It's horrible. And I'm a great believer that one day they should just get up and just go out and just not go back. But I believe at the same time people would say, oh no, we can't do that. We've got to go through the right channels and all that. I think if you're in a toxic marriage, the only way is out the door or out a window or out anywhere. Remove yourself from the situation.
Absolutely.
So it was great. And, once again, we're not just Scotland. We have several groups around Europe that support us. We have Raymond Dijkstra. He's from Holland and he provides a show every week, the International Chat Show. We have Colin McPherson from the Germany for Independence, and Colin's from the borders here, but he works out there in Germany. And we also have Melanie McCann, who's another mad football supporter. But she provides a service of independence from Sweden. So these people are on every week. And along with them, we also have a group here in Scotland that does an amazing job. And I'm huge fans of what they get up to. Although I won't be taking part in any of their stuff, the Scottish Resistance. And they're very much in the face and the front foyers, mostly of electric companies and gas companies, and also lots of history that they provide. And they do a lot of work for the homeless. So yeah, good up for the Scottish Resistance. Resistance sounds quite, like on the edge of getting ready for bother. But these people are really, really calm and they know what they're getting up to, and good on them for that.
What do you see, like a lot of like former Labour voters coming into the independence movement now with the way that New Labour has went? Like for me, it used to be a party of the Labour and has moved more centrist, closer towards what the Conservative Party is now as well. Like you see people in the shadow cabinet like Lisa Nandy being questioned about, are you going to stand with these strikes and stuff like that? And she's like, oh, I can't give an answer on that, when in reality, you're the party of the Labour is kind of in your message. You see people getting tired of that fed up system of where it's all more or less the same now.
Do you know what happens there, Ryan? You're answering your own question, because what's happening is people are seeing that red Tory is blue Tory.
Yeah.
And once again, they get frustrated. And, it must be a difficult thing if you're on the gravy train as a politician in Westminster and you're getting all your money and you might end up with an ermine coat on and £300 a day to just sleep in the House of Lords or whatever. Yeah. If that's the path you're going down as a career politician, turn round and go against your leader or the policy of the party. A bit like what we were talking about at the beginning, voting for Scottish Labour. Scottish Labour was red, it was Clydeside, it was working man, it was down the pits, it was on the sea, it was grafting, and the Corries wrote a song about Scotland will flourish by the strength of its labour. And obviously that wasn't about the Labour Party, it was about us grafting because we are hard workers. And that's a myth now. People could join the Labour Party and just be sitting on their arses all day and doing nothing and just, yes, nodding,
Yeah, it's a party that very much sits on the fence these days and goes with the status quo of what's popular.
Yeah, and to be honest, like there's some people like in Scottish Labour that I actually like. Like I do like Anna Sarwar on face value. I just disagree wholeheartedly with them on the independence issue, So it is. What do you think about recently when the First Minister was asked about what she thought about the Tories, and then she gave a response, and then there was like a massive backlash about it, especially from Douglas Ross, who's never ever said anything to single out a single group of people ever in his life, of course. What do you think because they uniquely attack people in the independence movement, it seems, and that kind of comes along with the fear mongering of it, right? Like you mentioned earlier, the snats, Anglophobia gets attached to it and all these things. Do you think that is consciously done, even by media to an extent, to put people off being part of it, when in reality, like you're saying, it is a peaceful, welcoming environment?
I thought it was cool beans. I think she just said what she meant. You know, somebody sticks a microphone up your face. I've said a couple of things that I've sort of went, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, you know, but no, she meant that, and that's the position she's from. Of course, that would be like Douglas Ross's £30,000 that he found in his back pocket that went all missing and things like that. You know, nobody went up and said, "Oh, Douglas." No. But yes, when it comes to Douglas Ross, I think he spends his life in fairyland, not fairyland, but fucking fairyland. You know. 2 ferries, all right, there's been a bit of a cock-up, it's all behind. I know that people are suffering and there's this, that and that. But take a wee look down south at the railway lines and the this, that and the next, and the PPE, millions that they gave to all their pals and all the rest of it. You know, take a wee look inside your own house, Douglas, before you come up there. And I think Douglas Ross, knowing him from around here and knowing his past, he just loves to stand there every Thursday and give it loudly. But on so many occasions...
I think it's a power thing for him.
Yeah, well... Yeah, he's known as a man around this area of, you know...
Yeah, bully.
Yeah, well, can you say that?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a
Said
fucking
worse.
bully.
He always says, look, if Douglas Ross ever wanted to come on here, we'll take him on here, but... You know, expect to be asked the hard questions.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Don't bully him.
Because
he wouldn't like
that. No.
But yes, he's known in this area as that. Certainly from his school days.
Yeah.
And people around here will never forget that. So yeah, when he's there in the Scottish Parliament on a Thursday for First Minister's questions, I really sometimes only watch it for the first 20 minutes. To see him get his arse scalped.
Yeah, I mean...
because it generally is.
It doesn't take long, does it?
He's put himself in such a bad position recently with the amount of U-turns, right? Like, we called him a driving instructor here last time.
Yeah. The flip-flop man.
Yeah, he was on about... no, I think Truss... Because it was Boris first, when he was like, should go... Wait, shouldn't, but he should when the Ukraine war's over, whenever that's going to be. And then it was Truss, I think she can win the next election. And then it was the tax thing. And then it was Truss he was like, I welcome that. And now it's get behind Sunak.
It's budget, reversal in the budget.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, it does feel like a lot of the time that he's, like, they've put him in place in Westminster as the face, just to stop independence, really. Like, they don't have any interest in him getting to be First Minister and that, as long as he's doing
Is that Douglas Murray?
Yeah.
Is that the chap that they don't know? Who is he?
I'm going to kind of, like... forays away from politics a little bit. Just we'll get back to it because I just think we've been politics heavy for about 50 minutes now.
Yeah.
So,
Has it?
yeah.
Decompress a little bit.
We're not actually. I'm still sticking with the marches, to be fair. So I want you to speak a little bit, if you can, about Culloden, PJ, because I know you're very passionate about Culloden, and I know there's a few marches and protests and demonstrations and things. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what's happening up there and how you're a part of it?
Well, firstly, it's some sad news. The eminent writer Christopher Duffy, who has done so much work on the history of Culloden, passed away this weekend. We're very sad, and our thoughts go out to his family. So thank you very much for all that you've done. On the Culloden front, very strange things happened there. I got it in my head once again that I would like to take part in helping out a group that was formed many years ago called a Group to Stop the Development at Culloden. And it was basically houses were being built and they were just squeezing in on the actual National Trust for Scotland area that was set up there. And the National Trust for Scotland set up only has about a third of the actual battlefield. So slowly, these houses are creeping in. And I thought, they can't have that. I was stood once in Bannockburn, where the statue of Robert the Bruce is, on his horse. Yeah. And I looked around, and there's these housing estates And they're right up in the solar panels and the jacuzzis. And I thought, God, we can't have this. So I got involved with that. And it is very close to my heart. And it will be very close to my heart when I die, because I intend to have my ashes scattered there. Just don't tell them. But anyway, that's a secret mission, because I always thought it'd be great to have your ashes scattered somewhere where people could go and have a peaceful walk and then go and have a bowl of soup and some nice bread afterwards. So, and it'll always be looked after, as opposed to some...
And am I right in thinking you camp out there?
I do. I spend one night a year... Camping's not the right word, although people get it in their mind that I'm up there with a tent and a stove and all the rest of it. No, what I do is I spend religiously, although 2 of the years I couldn't do it because of the COVID, one night a year. And now it's usually the night of the midnight. We have a midnight commemoration, and we have a couple of guitar players, we have poets, we have public speakers, and we all meet up at midnight on the Friday before the Saturday's official commemoration. And I usually set up the speakers and, like the mics and everything. So I'm out there with the batteries, keeping everything. And we have a couple of braziers, and we have a chap called Jim Singer. He comes over from Crantara, from Aberdeenshire, and puts these braziers up. And it's very, very welcoming, although the weather's not.
No.
we have it is Baltic, and we have Ted Christopher trying to play his guitar, and his fingers are frozen. But it's like being on a big independence march, because the people that are there know why they're there, and they're doing it to remember what happened there. And we're not all there remembering, Bonnie Prince Charlie and the Jacobites, and it's basically for everybody who fell. It was a horrible thing and a horrible day, and lots of people lost their lives there. So yes, I do spend a night there every year, and what I do is I basically just pitch up with my rucksack, a torch. When everybody goes home at midnight or after the service, I just stay there until the next day. I'm very blessed that most of the mornings that I've popped up the next day is I'm a keen photographer, and some of the sunrises over Culloden have just, and it just dries me out and warms me out if the weather's been pretty bad. But I love to do that, and I have no fear again. And people talk about the ghosts and all that. A couple of years ago, I went to a night with, Diane Gabaldon, who wrote the Outlander series.
Oh, wow.
And she was at Culloden doing a wee evening. And I got up and then introduced myself to her and explained to her what I'd done once a year. And I said, did you have the same sort of effect or feeling? How did you feel when you came to visit Culloden for the first time? And she burst into tears.
Oh.
I felt pretty bad. And there was a bit of a hole, she was pretty choked up, because she really did feel like, she was coming to a place where it was still alive. It wasn't dead. And of course, the whole idea of Outlander came from Doctor Who.
All right.
Because in one of the early Doctor Who programmes, they land in Culloden, and a guy rushes in with a kill, and he's Jamie Fraser.
Yeah.
And he goes off whirling about with the Doctor. And later on, that same actor, Fraser Hines, got a bit in Outlander.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really weird.
Full circle, eh?
Yeah.
Kind of talking, well, you're saying full circle. Do you find it strange, obviously, with Culloden and obviously the 40 years preceding that we're still facing the same struggles now?
No, because we're attached to our southern neighbours. Not
It's,
at all.
we're not obviously fighting with swords and guns
Yeah,
anymore,
no.
but the struggle is still the same.
I'll let you into a wee secret. I do a lot of travelling around the west coast of Scotland, and I'm always in Skye or Oban or wherever. And whenever I see a Union Jack flying, I think of garrisons from back in the old 18th century, Highlanders moving around Scotland from here to there, and there's garrisons everywhere, and they'll all have Union Jacks flying from them. And that's the very first thing that I think of is, oh, here we go, right? It's the garrison again at, wherever it is, if it's Fort Augustus or Fort William, or they've got the Union Jack, and you're like, they're still here. They're still here. It hasn't really changed very much. Thinking it like that. Going back to the Culloden thing, we have had some real bad defeats in that. The very first campaign we went on was to stop 16 houses being built at a place called View Hill Farm, but they went ahead and built them. But recently, there's been another place where it was a riding stables, and they wanted to change it from riding stables to log cabins on stilts with coloured lights and jacuzzis outside and that. And this particular area that they wanted to use was where the British troops dismounted from their horse brigades. And so it was very important for us. And they have tried 3 times now over several years to get planning permission. I'm glad to say that they finally, I think they've given up because they got nut back every time.
Yeah,
which was, it's not evicted to run around with your sword and all that. Yeah. But we know what we did, and we went on those marches in some really cold days to stop that happening.
How are the people?
Yeah. Yeah, funny you should say that. You've stolen my line because what I was going to say, I'll save it to the end.
Okay,
remind me about that. But yeah.
But just talking about like other things away from like the Klansman stuff, I was looking you up on social media and stuff like that, and you do a lot of things with where you're traveling all the time. Obviously, you're traveling for marches, but traveling just for. I know this sounds like a bit of a stupid statement because it's obvious, but you love this country. Like, you absolutely adore this country. And the way that you describe it and go to places and explain everything is, like, really, really interesting. Like, it got to the point where I'd came to your page and that to see what the marches and that were about. And I spent, like, an hour just watching walk from Skye or from Aberlour to Dufton. And there was a point in the Aberlour and Dufton when I was like, I've been on this walk. Do you know?
Do you know my favourite video you've done, PJ, is you took your canoe, I know you're into your canoeing, kayaking, sorry, apologies, over to a little island, and you found an old grave.
Yeah, for Monday.
Was it the clan?
Yeah, McDonald.
Yeah, and like this isn't. I googled this. This isn't a place that's on maps and things like that. You need to know about this place to go and find it. So, like,
we're very blessed with some great Scottish history.
But this is a thing that's like hundreds of... How do you come across these things? It's just...
Well, that's a very good point. And if you travel around and you go to Glencoe quite a bit, you find out... Because wherever I go to... Yeah, I was in Skye recently and I went to find some medieval graves, and I found them, like medieval guys, with the big sword and the armour and that. And you're like, I never expected to find that right here. And it's just unbelievable. So you've got to film it. I'm not very good at the filming and the editing. A lot of it is just, I just stitch it all together. It's not quite Paul Mutton or dare I say, what's his name with the long hair? Egypt.
The Scottish guy.
Aye.
Neil Oliver.
I was no quite.
He's went a bit down the rabbit hole.
Yes, he's a bit
down in New Zealand. He lives in New Zealand, so
does he?
Yeah, he doesn't even come here. So yeah, it's not quite up to their sort of standards.
You're just like you're into everything. I said to Ryan before we came on, I could have took the Silent Clansman stuff out and probably still done a full podcast on you. Like absolutely. Gosh. Do you want me to just list through some of the things and if there's anything you want to speak about? So I've got just bullet points really. Marathons. How many marathons are you on, PJ?
11.
11 marathons.
11,
And considering I ran my first marathon last month and it absolutely destroyed me, and you've run that marathon...
Yeah, I think 9 times.
9 times?
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Is that
stupidity? Yes. Well, I guess, at the end of the day, what I tried to do was, and I haven't managed to do it this year, it's my man OT. You know how you get an MOT for your car?
Yes.
I always think that if you could run a marathon once a year, then you can't be going far wrong. Even though it kills you.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest honours that my daughter gave me was the fact that, let's say you were a really fit runner and you run that in 2 hours, 20 minutes or something like that, and I come in at 6 hours or 5 hours or whatever. She said to me, you're a better person because you've doubled what you've had to put into that run than the
100%.
people have to do the same distance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've had to go through, and because they're fit, really athletes, they know where it's going to hurt, and then you get to know where it's going to hurt. And some of those videos of the marathons are quite squeamish, you know. And everyone, without doubt, there's a wee video at the end saying, thanks very much, everybody. It's been brilliant. That's it. I'll see you next year.
My absolute favourite line is you're about 5 or 6 miles in. You're like, it's going great. And then it just cuts about another 5 miles down. You're like, I'm in a dark place.
And you know, once again, it's a bit like the marching because you're surrounded by like-minded people.
Yeah.
And there's other people out there who, I might be a wee bit fitter than that are behind me.
Yeah.
And they're struggling. So I feel they're, you know, but when you come to the end and hit Inverness, it's like...
That hill at 19, 20 miles at doors is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
And when I drive it, I think, my God, right? And one of the years I was there at the Doors Inn when they were open, they were having a barbecue, and there was people stood lining the road with cheeseburgers and Guinness, and you know what's coming in front of you, and you're like,
Oscar Wilde quotes come to mind.
Murder. But yeah, no, they're great, and I always look back at them fondly. And only one I conked out on. I got a hip problem at about 3 miles. I spoke to one of the first aiders, and they said, well, if we start giving you first aid just now, then you'll have to drop out. Because the most embarrassing thing for runners is they have a sweep bus that comes at the end.
And they're all in the tinfoil blankets.
And these are people that are just... And they've all got their own stories. Everybody's got their own stories, how they came to be on the sweep bus. And I didn't want to be on the sweep bus. So I went on, and I got to about 18 miles and fell over into a jaggy bush by the side of the road. And I was lying there with all these brambles around me. And I was near in tears because I wasn't going to get my goodie bag. Yeah. And I wasn't going to get my soup and my banana. And there's a soup and a banana, right? My T-shirt and everything. And I had to call it a day there. But that was only the once. And once again, I went on after that. But the highlight of even all the Loch Ness marathons was actually going to London and running the London Marathon. And I ran it with my salt tie around my neck for the whole thing. And I never, ever, and it was clapping from the start to the finish, never had one word of rudeness against me. Yeah. And I was really proud of London and the people that all came out to watch that. It was just amazing. And every year after, I tried to get into the ballot, and I don't get in. But I loved that marathon. That was really... And my kids, my daughter and my ex-wife Frances turned up out the crowd with a huge sign.
Brilliant.
It's just like, there's too much.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Good. No, that's amazing.
I'm just aware of our time because we usually just put on an hour, but we'll end it off.
Can I just ask you a quick one?
Go for it. Yeah, we'll end off on a question each.
I want to ask you about tackling the fan at Elgin City.
Well, guess who's going in the Northeast Corner Clips of the Year 2022?
I want to ask a wee bit, because I know you've got a long history of Elgin City. Yeah. I've seen you down there many a times because I've been to a few games myself and things. Can I just ask you about that day? Because the photos, I don't think, do it justice. No. What kind of happened?
It was absolutely magic. And nobody was hurt.
Yeah.
So what happened was basically being on the security team down there, our job is to keep the supporters where the supporters are meant to be. in the standing area and not on the park. Now, unfortunately, Elgin City lost that cup game to Clydebank that day, and a few of the Clydebankies jumped the fence and went for the players. Now, the unfortunate thing is, I guess it's like, being a copper in, a big event or something like that, and somebody jumps out and you don't know.
Jonah Luma would have been proud of that tackle. I'm not joking.
Well, a lot of people say to me I wouldn't get a game for Scotland because it was round his neck. Now, here's the funny thing that not everybody knows about, but a lot of my close friends know. And the chap who I tackled, who was one of the Clydebankie supporters, jumped on the park and started running, and I chased him and I pulled him to the ground. As I pulled him to the ground, being a pacifist, kept saying to him, I'm really sorry, I'm really sorry, pal. And we both fell on top of each other. And a couple of their players came in and they could hear me saying, I'm really sorry, pal, about this. I didn't mean to hurt you. Yeah. And he got up and we shook hands and they went off. And now I follow Clydebank on their Facebook page wherever they go, and they remember me and they say such nice things about me, because during the game as well, I allow them to basically just get on and enjoy themselves. It's a long way for them to come up to see their team win.
Yeah,
Brucey bonus get the better of you sometimes.
And I loved that. It was really good. Although saying that, I was down at Elgin City last weekend for hospitality, and that was really good. But yeah, that particular day, so he jumped the fence, I chased him and I apologised.
The photo is just absolutely quality. It's just like, oh yeah, we'd not like to be on the end of that.
But he did apologise, so it's fine. So I just want to ask you, just to kind of round things off, first of all, thanks very much for your time. I knew this was going to be a good episode from the moment I seen the post where you're at the football and you describe one certain linesman as the blindsman, and I was like, with that level of Douglas Ross trolling, you will fit right in on this show. But
fantastic.
Well, there is a great picture of me taking a selfie and he's coming up the tunnel.
Yeah. I just want to ask you, even when Scotland goes independent, what do you think an independent Scotland looks like to you?
Great question.
When Scotland becomes independent, I don't think there's not much demographic change. The big changes will come with the economics, because we will be able to control every penny that we make in this country without having to give it to our landlord and then them giving us back a third of it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And also, the decisions that we make will not be interrupted by Westminster. We will make our own decisions. They may be right, they may be wrong. We don't know. But we will not have Big Brother dictating to us, no, you can't do that. Oh, yes, we can. And it's definite, Ryan, I can assure you, 100%, the people of Scotland will have their say. What I always try to say to people is, people are the power of Scotland. People make the decisions. People are good in Scotland. People are not stupid. People know what they want. And the people will make this country flourish as an independent country.
Awesome. Look forward to it. Thank you so much for coming on, Paul.